The first thing Daniel Carter noticed was the apron. Stained at the edges, tied a little too tightly around a slim waist, it marked her as invisible in a room full of power suits and polished shoes. He barely looked up when she approached his table, carrying a tray that trembled just slightly, as if the weight of more than plates rested on her hands. What he did not know, what no one in that restaurant knew, was that this moment would quietly dismantle everything he believed about status, pride, and the kind of strength that never announces itself. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen when we stop judging by appearances, take a moment right now to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us why compassion still matters. Daniel was a rising star in Chicago's corporate world, a man shaped by boardrooms and deadlines, by a childhood that taught him success was the only shield against pain. Raised in a strict Christian household in Ohio, he had once believed humility was a virtue, but adulthood had sanded that belief down until it barely showed. Now, at 34, he measured people by their usefulness, their polish, their proximity to power. The upscale restaurant he frequented after work was one of his sanctuaries, a place where he felt affirmed by the soft music, the expensive wine, and the unspoken hierarchy that placed him comfortably above the staff. The waitress assigned to his table that evening moved with a quiet efficiency. Her name tag read Grace, though Daniel did not read it closely enough to register the irony. She had kind eyes, the kind that seemed to notice small things, like when a glass was nearly empty or when someone sighed without realizing it. Her brown hair was neatly tied back, no loose strands daring to challenge the rules of professionalism. Daniel thought nothing of her beyond the fact that she was slow to bring his second drink, and that minor inconvenience was enough to harden his mood. What Daniel did not see was Grace's mourning. He did not see her kneeling beside her bed, whispering a prayer for strength before another double shift. He did not see the framed Bible verse tucked into her locker, reminding her that the last shall be first. He did not see the emails piling up on her phone, messages she could not answer yet, decisions she was postponing, because timing, she believed, was everything. Grace had learned early in life how easily people underestimated her. Growing up in a small town in Indiana, faith had been the one constant when everything else fell apart. Her father had passed away when she was 16, leaving behind debts, responsibilities, and a lesson she carried into adulthood: humility could coexist with ambition. She had studied business administration, graduated with honors, and then disappeared from the radar of everyone who thought they knew her future. The apron was not a symbol of failure for her, it was a shield, a test, and a reminder. As the evening unfolded, Daniel's impatience grew. He checked his phone repeatedly, annoyed by a deal that refused to close and by a life that demanded constant proving. When Grace returned to his table, apologizing softly for the delay, Daniel barely acknowledged her. His words were clipped, his expression distant. In his mind, she was part of the background, like the soft lighting or the muted jazz. He did not consider that every word he chose carried weight. Yet something subtle began to shift. Daniel noticed how Grace treated others. An elderly couple received an extra smile and careful attention. A nervous young man on a first date was reassured with warmth. Grace moved through the room with a calm confidence that felt out of place for someone he had already categorized as insignificant. It unsettled him, though he could not explain why. The restaurant buzzed with conversation, laughter, and the clink of silverware, but under the surface, a different story was unfolding. The owner had announced weeks earlier that a major corporate acquisition was imminent, one that would change the future of the entire establishment. Staff speculated endlessly about who the buyer might be. Grace listened without comment, carrying plates, wiping tables, waiting. Daniel, coincidentally, was involved in that very acquisition. His firm had been advising the buyer, a reclusive CEO known for unconventional leadership and deeply rooted Christian values. Daniel had never met her, only heard rumors about her insistence on understanding every layer of a business from the ground up. He admired the strategy, even if he found it inefficient. As the night neared closing, the restaurant manager approached Grace with an unusual request. There was a private meeting scheduled in the back office, one that required her presence. Grace nodded calmly, untied her apron, and folded it with care. The simple act caught Daniel's attention. He watched, curious now, as she removed the apron and set it aside, revealing a tailored blazer underneath, subtle, elegant, unmistakably out of place moments earlier. Then he saw the ring. It was not flashy, but Daniel recognized it instantly. He had seen it in confidential documents and whispered conversations, a custom piece engraved with a cross and the initials of a multinational corporation. The CEO's ring. The room seemed to tilt as understanding crashed into him. Grace was not just a waitress. She was the woman whose decisions influenced markets, livelihoods, futures. The woman he had ignored, dismissed, and spoken down to without a second thought. She walked past his table without looking at him, her posture straight, her expression composed, as if nothing had changed, because for her, nothing had. In the quiet that followed, Daniel felt something unfamiliar bloom in his chest. It was not fear of professional consequences, though those loomed large. It was shame, raw, undeniable shame. He thought of every assumption he had made, every lesson from Sunday school about loving thy neighbor, every sermon about humility he had half forgotten. Grace had not needed to announce who she was. She had chosen to be unseen, to test the character of those around her, including his. The days that followed were heavy for Daniel. News broke publicly of the acquisition, and Grace's face appeared in business journals, her story framed as visionary leadership rooted in faith and empathy. Interviews spoke of her belief in servant leadership, of her time working anonymously in her own establishments to understand the realities of her employees. Each article felt like a mirror held up to Daniel's soul. He replayed the evening again and again, remembering her patience, her kindness, her restraint. He realized how rarely he extended those qualities without calculation. For the first time in years, Daniel attended church not out of habit, but desperation. The familiar hymns stirred something long dormant. He prayed not for success, but for forgiveness and the courage to change. Grace, for her part, did not dwell on Daniel. She had seen men like him before, products of a world that rewarded confidence and punished vulnerability. Her test was never about exposing others, but about reminding herself why she led the way she did. When Daniel eventually reached out, requesting a meeting, she agreed, not as a superior seeking validation, but as a believer open to reconciliation. The meeting was brief, professional, and transformative for Daniel. Grace spoke of purpose, of aligning work with values, of the responsibility that came with power. She did not accuse him or shame him. Her grace was quiet, but it cut deeper than anger ever could. Daniel left with a sense that he had been given a second chance, not by her alone, but by God. Over the next year, Daniel's life changed in ways no promotion ever had. He began mentoring young professionals, volunteering at church outreach programs, listening more than he spoke. He learned to see people beyond their roles, to recognize dignity in every task. The memory of the apron and the ring stayed with him, a symbol of a truth he would never forget. If this story has touched your heart, if it has made you reflect on how you see others, please take a moment to engage with this video. Your likes, shares, and comments help spread messages of compassion and hope to more people who need them. And before we reach the final moments of this story, I invite you to comment below with one word that describes how this story made you feel. Your words matter, and they help build a community rooted in empathy. Years later, Daniel would often think back to that evening, not with embarrassment, but gratitude. He understood now that some of the most important lessons arrived disguised as ordinary moments. Grace had never needed to prove who she was. Her faith had already done that. And Daniel had learned that true success was not measured by how high you climbed, but by how gently you treated others along the way. In a world obsessed with titles and appearances, the quiet power of humility still has the final word.